Hey everybody, how you do? I'm still gunnarolla, and may surprise you to know, I'm still Asian.
I'm Asian?
It's May, which means that it's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, or since I live in Canada, Asian Heritage Month. There is a difference between the experience of Asian people living in America versus Asian people living in Canada, as far as I've observed, but we'll get into that a little later. This month is nothing new. In fact, for the past couple years, I wanted to do these big stories, but I get worried that I won't do them right, so then I just don't do anything at all. If there's one thing I've learned about this community, it's that we have to serve a lot of people. Have you looked at a map of Asia lately? That's a lot of different countries and a lot of different cultures. And our stories tend to focus on the experience of East Asians, forgetting that, South Asians exist, Southeast Asians, Pacific Islanders. But every little bit of representation is important, and especially given recent escalating events, I think it's just important for me to dive in. So let's just talk about my own personal experiences being Asian. So I grew up in London, Canada, which has all of the things of London, England, without having any of the things of London, England. It does have a lot of white people though. My family immigrated here from Indonesia, and they themselves are ethnically Chinese. So their identity is really Chinese Indonesian, and there's a whole other political, historical discussion to go with that, but that's a different video. I grew up without any extended family here, so really all that I know about my heritage and my culture would have been through my parents and Canada's London. Up until university, I was always one of maybe 2 or 3 Asian people in my class. And to make things a little bit more confusing, I went to a French school. My mom told me that I actually came home one day when I was really young, and I made fun of Chinese people. And looking back on that, it's actually quite sad because I probably learned to make fun of Chinese people because I was being made fun of myself. But I didn't see myself as different. The lens through which you see the world is shaped by the people that you see in your world, and the people that I saw in my world were mostly white. In grade 3, I remember being picked on so severely that I actually broke down and cried in class, and I had no friends for the rest of the year. That experience actually traumatized me, and I think it really messed with my own self-worth, and just till this day made me feel unworthy of having friends. I look back on that and I wonder, kids get picked on all the time, but was that racism? Or was it just because I'm weird? And then it's why do I feel guilty for implying that it might have been racism because I was one of the only different kids in that class? Why me? I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that struggle. By grade 6, I had a very defining moment, and it's that this girl turned around, looks at me, and she goes, "Wow, you really do have almond-shaped eyes." And I remember thinking, what? It's the moment of realization where you realize you're Asian. People see you differently. From that moment on, consciously and subconsciously, I think I just wanted to assimilate. I did not want to be different. I didn't want to be so close to my parents. I didn't want to have weird lunches. I wanted to stay out late. I wanted to wear deodorant. I just wanted to not fulfill whatever idea I thought people had of Asians. So there was a lot of that internalized racism that really I didn't break out of until I got to university, and then my world opened up a lot more. I met kids from Toronto who were more connected to their culture. I met international students. In university, I started pronouncing my last name properly because for 18 years prior to that, I just kind of went with however it was read, and it was always read wrong. I did a degree in media studies, so I did a lot of critical thinking and learning about things that, I hadn't really engaged with or questioned before. And then I started making YouTube videos. On one hand, YouTube is great because I was immediately adopted into the Asian American, specifically Filipino community. On the other hand, the comment section exists. As you may know, my most impactful video celebrates how proud we are to be Canadian.
Step 3, live multiculturally.
I would wager that a quarter of the comments that we received at the peak of that video were just explicitly racist.
On a serious note, get the f out of here, ching. Go back home. We don't have enough room for more of your f***ing population. You don't have enough room, I don't stay in your house.
And so many of them centered on, why is there an Asian guy representing Canada? He's not a real Canadian. Up until that point, I don't think I had ever really dealt with explicit racism. And I remember the advice that I got from some of my colleagues who are all white. They said to just ignore those comments because, you know, people are hateful, they're gonna say whatever they wanna say, they're jealous of you, and you're just feeding the trolls. I may have not been hurt by those comments, but I knew that they were wrong. I wanted to highlight how absurd they were, and I wanted to talk about them to say that, hey, this is happening. In Canada, we are taught that diversity is our strength, but it's to the point that we believe that we're so diverse, we don't even want to talk about it. Part of our identity is this cultural mosaic. You know, everybody has a place here, it's so diverse. Of course, if you take a look at the comments on that video, not everybody thinks that way. And I thought it was important to highlight that and to have discussions about that. And to this day, that video is studied in schools to talk about what Canadian identity is. Looking back, I do regret that a lot of my earlier responses centered on how I had earned my right to say I was Canadian. Because I was born here, because I'm fluent in English and French, I went to school here, I have a business here, I was on an episode of Degrassi. But like, what white person has to do all those things? I think if you call Canada home, you're Canadian, with the understanding that many different people live here and many people lived here before us. Canada is not this utopian, you know, non-racist country. We do not have the greatest track record when it comes to our Aboriginal peoples. Also a discussion for another time. So as I started to get more racist comments online, coincidentally, I was encountering more racism in person to my face. I've been called an immigrant, little Asian boy, Jackie Chan, chink, by complete strangers. Been on a bus when a guy just goes on a whole rant about white power. And I've also been confronted and told to go back to my country. Meeting somebody and them telling you that they have yellow fever, which sounds like a compliment, but it's not. I feel like so much of my Asian experience has been being trapped in conversations that you don't want to be in, having to smile and nervously, awkwardly laugh when somebody makes an assumption or microaggression or, you know, a casually racist joke. In recent years, I've really stopped talking a lot about race because it's exhausting, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, because I cringe at some of the things I have said. It's just easier to step back and pretend like it's not a thing. But by doing that is how we end up in the situation that we're in today, where people of Asian descent are being targeted, attacked, and murdered in the streets. The last 2 years that I attended VidCon, I pitched and moderated different panels on Asian representation and the importance of Asians in media. The last panel that I ever held, we had a Q&A, and we heard from a number of Asian American high school students that wanted advice from our panel on how to deal with racism that they were encountering in their classroom. So I'm on this panel with Asian creators that I admire, and my words of wisdom to these teenagers is, you should be proud to be Asian because we have the coolest music, the greatest fashion, and the best food. No applause. Years later, here we are again talking about anti-Asian racism, and what do I see on a poster board? Love us like you love our food. I don't know how I feel about that anymore. I get the sentiment behind that statement. Obviously, I said a very similar thing, but you know, you shouldn't love somebody just because of the things about their culture that you can consume. You should love them because they're human. Racism is not just an individual, intentional thing. It's institutional. It's in the media. It's everywhere. If you want to learn more about how Asians ended up outside of America, I'd recommend this book. It reads like a textbook, but there are so many exclusionary laws and, migration paths that I never knew about because we don't learn about it in school. So that concludes my diary entry for today. If you're gonna take away anything from this video, I think it's that we all have to work at recognizing and calling out racism in all its forms, even the most harmless stereotypes. And it's not just for Asians, it's for anybody. Nobody should be made to feel less than. It's exhausting. I've been trapped in so many uncomfortable conversations with friends. I've made comments that I thought were harmless that actually were harmful. We should celebrate our differences and do everything we can to make sure that everyone is treated fairly. Now, if you excuse me, I'm off to figure out where I belong. Asia? Canada? Never good enough for either one. I'll see you next time. À la prochaine.